As a commitment on inventory.
Kehoe, Seanad. I'm grateful to the House for the opportunity to discuss this important topic here this evening. I would like to put on the record of the House my firm belief that the census of population is one of the most important sources of information for policy making and planning in Ireland and is widely used by all sectors in society. The census in Ireland enjoys a great support from the public who trust the CSO to gather and store their data in a professional and proper manner. The census of population carried out in 1926 was the first undertaken by an independent Irish state and is an historical collection of great value and interest for historians, researchers, the general public and the diaspora. The debate this evening demonstrates this fact clearly. Following the release of the records from the 1901 and 1911 census, there is a greater appreciation and understanding across society of the value of these important historical documents. I would like to encourage everyone present who has not checked out the 1901 and 1911 census to do so. In 2013, the year of the gathering, we have witnessed significant numbers of our diaspora returning to Ireland, many with an interest in tracing their roots and their Irish ancestry. In this context, the question of enabling the publication of the 1926 census returns is both important and timely. While I welcome this debate this evening, I do, however, speak in opposition to Senator O'Muircheartaigh bill. The question of publishing the 1926 census ahead of schedule is a complex and legal and technical one. The Government is of the view that providing early publication before vital preparatory work has been undertaken is premature and that there are a number of issues requiring further consideration before a decision to publish could be made. As the Senator will be aware, in its programme for government, this government said that it would enable publication of the 1926 census to stimulate genealogy tourism. We have seen the great interest in the 1901 and 1911 census have generated and understand the particular importance of that held in 1926. The 1901-1911 census project, which was carried out as a cooperative project on a repayment basis by Library and Archives Canada, with Irish National Archives, cost approximately €5 million. The 1901-1911 census material was, for the most part, available in microfilm format. This made the digitisation process relatively cost-effective and enabled delivery to be relatively efficient. The 1926 census has never been microfilmed, and I understand that a significant level of work is required to scan the cross-index the individual return sheets. The Minister for Arts, Heritage and the Gaeltacht, Minister Jimmy Deehan, has established a 1926 working group which comprises of officials from his department, the National Archives and the CSO. This group has met to consider how best to enable the publication of the 1926 census, and the CSO and the National Archives have agreed to facilitate the preparatory work on the census records. For the information of this House, it is worth noting that this census was undertaken under the 1926 Statistics Act. This Act did not permit any access to census records at any time. The 1993 Act repealed the 1926 and 1946 Acts and provided for the release of census forms 100 years after the date of the relevant census. This applies to censuses from the 1926 census on. When the 100-year access was debated in the Seanad in this chamber in 1993, the view was expressed that the time period for confidentiality should be reduced to 75 or even 50 years. On the other hand, the retrospective introduction of the 100 years exemption was seen by some as undermining the original guarantee given to householders that this information would not be released. However, it was generally accepted that 100 years was a reasonable compromise, given that relatively few people would still be alive after 100 years. This means that under the current legislation, the 1926 census records will be open to the public by the National Archives in the year 2026. By that time, almost all of the persons covered in the 1926 census will be deceased. The 2011 census results showed fewer than 400 persons aged 100 years or more. There were, however, some 58,000 persons aged 85 years or older, most of whom would be likely to have been entered on the 1926 census return. Releasing the 1926 forms might be seen as reneging on the guarantee given to the significant number of persons still alive today. It is therefore a delicate issue that requires to be approached with great sensitivity and caution. Some people have suggested releasing only information for those born prior to 1912. However, the situation is that the 100-year rule refers to the relevant census forms in question and not the age of the individuals covered on those census forms. Therefore, regardless of the age of the individual in question, the data cannot be released until 100 years after the date of the census. Of the pre-independent censuses, only the 1901 and 1911 census returns remain inactive today. The census records for the years 1821 to 1891 having been destroyed, many lost as a result of the destruction of the Public Records Office during the Civil War. The 1901 and the 1911 census were undertaken under legislation which made no provision for the confidentiality of the information recorded on them. These records were deposited in the Public Record Office in 1929 and were made available as public records in 1961 via a warrant by the Minister for Justice under the Public Records Ireland Act 1867. They are now among the most frequently used records in the National Archives. To put this debate in a comparative context, it may be helpful to note the position in a number of other countries. Public access to census records only after a lengthy period is the practice in many. In the UK and in New Zealand, for example, a 100-year rule applies. In Canada, census returns are released after 92 years, and accordingly, their 1921 census returns are being gradually made available this year. In Australia, a 99-year rule applies, while in the United States, returns are released after only 72 years. In considering the question of publication of the 1926 census, the government must also have in mind any possible impact that a release might have on confidence of the public in present-day guarantees of confidentiality the CSO gives it to respondents. For example, the 100-year rule is what the people understood when they were filling out the 2011 census, and to change this could therefore, I feel, damage the whole confidentiality of the census and the trust that we have with collecting census. Independence, objectivity and the guarantee of confidentiality are the core values of all official statistics produced by the CSO. The CSO has a long-standing reputation for protecting the information it collects. Confidentiality, as I've outlined, and privacy are rightly the issues of great concern for the public. The legal guarantee of confidentiality that comes with the census, along with the untarnished reputation of the CSO in upholding this guarantee in practice, is important in persuading the public to disclose their private information on the census forms. In a broader context, the CSO conducts vitally important work in producing and publishing official statistics for this country across a range of indicators. As such, further consideration is required of the confidentiality issues and their potential impact before any amendment to the 1993 Act in the manner proposed could be agreed. Great care must be taken to ensure that any change would not undermine public confidence in the CSO, which could have potential to seriously damage the return of data by respondents. In conclusion, Kehoe, I would like to thank Senator O'Murray for bringing this bill to the House this evening. As Minister with responsibility for the CSO, I want to place on the record the Government's appreciation of the important public service role of that office. The CSO serves Ireland well and publishes a vast range of statistics on the economy, society and other important topics. This information is used by government departments and public bodies and by EU institutions, the IMF, the OECD and other international bodies. I am personally committed to developing official statistics to support effective policy and planning for the reasons I have already stated. However, the Government is not in a position to support the bill before the Seanad here this evening.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Trevor O'Cloughlin.